body related to validations and derivations in the change request. Okay. Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Sadhana.
Sadhana.
Okay. Okay. So before starting the class, everyone please turn on your cameras. This is a strict warning from Vishnu sir. So everyone has to turn on their cameras. Oh, I think Pranit, Keshava not joined. Keshava and Rushita.
Yeah, I'm calling them, but they
Okay.
Sita Prana.
Okay. So, for change request validations and derivations, we call it as business rules, we have the baddie, that is two baddies we have. Okay. So, this is the enhancements part. So USMD underscore rule underscore service is the enhancements part for change request validations and derivations baddies. Okay. So in this enhancements part, okay. So to go to this screen, the baddie T code is SC18. Okay. So in this USMD underscore rule underscore service. So in this enhancements part, we have two baddies. So first, let me explain what is validations and derivations. Okay, so I'm going to the material menu. Create material. Okay, change request type. I am selecting MAT01. Okay, so here while creating the change request, if you want to make any field values as default, or if you want to derive any field value from other attribute, like if you want to make the material type as default as raw material. So for MAT01 change request type, okay, then you have to do it through that rule service baddie. Okay. And also if you want to make any field like mandatory error message, if you want to populate, then also you have to write the code, or you have to maintain the error message using the rule service. Okay. And if you want to uh, derive any attribute value from other attribute value. Like if I give the material type as raw material ROH, then I want to populate the authorization group as some Z or something. So then this we call as the derivations. Okay. And if you want to validate any value, so like let's say you have the phone number attribute, and in that attribute, if the user enters any character like other than numbers, then you want to populate an error message, then that we call as a validation. Okay. So all these comes under business rules, that is validations and derivations. So to achieve these business rules, we have the um, body called USMD rule service. Okay. So in that body, you can define your validations and derivations using the code logic, and you can write your own business rules. Okay. So these business rules will be based on the user requirements. So whatever the client requires for change request type, based on the change request type or based on the data model, you have to build the business rules. Okay. So to achieve this, we have to use the body, like the enhancements part, USMD underscore rule service. So when this USMD underscore rule service baddies will trigger is when you open the change request for creation, and until you submit, like till this process, the USMD rule service baddies will trigger in the background. Okay. So let's say I have entered some value here, ROH, some value I have taken. Okay. And now I have clicked on the check button or enter button. Then in the background, that rule service body will run, and it will take, and if there are any validations and derivations, then it will take those validations and derivations from that rule service body, and it will show here. Okay. So till the submit process of change request type, the rule service body will trigger in the background. Okay. So let me go to, so this is the main purpose of the rule service body. So in this rule service enhancements part, we have two baddies. Okay. One is USMD rule service and other is USMD rule service cross entity. So this ET is cross entity. So here you can see the description of each baddie. So this is for define validations and derivations. This is also validations and derivations, but this is across entity, different entity types. Okay. So this USMD underscore rule service will work only if you want to do any validations and derivations in single entity. So let's take this general data. Okay. This basic data is one entity. Okay. And this description is one entity type, and dimensions is one entity type. So then the rule service body, the first one will work only if you have the validations and derivations for single entity type. Okay. So if you want to populate industry sector based on the material type you give, then you can use the first one, that is USMD underscore rule service body. If you want to define like derive any attribute, like here you have material type as ROH something, then you want to derive basic text or some other sales values or anything, like you want to derive attribute from one entity type to other entity type based on other entity type, then you have to use the cross entity body. Okay. So this body you have to use for if you want to have validations and derivations across different entity type, then you have to use the cross entity body. Okay. So as we discussed, each body will have one body definition, and it can have multiple implementations. Okay. So for rule service body, we have the interface, this um, U- USMD rule service interface we have, and in this interface we have these methods. Okay. So one is check entity and check entity hierarchy, change request start, hierarchy final, and these all we have. And the most frequently used methods are check entity and the derive entity. Okay. So this is for if you have any derivations in your change request, then you have to use this derive entity method and you have to write the business rules in this method. Okay. And if you want to check any uh, validations, like if you want to check any attribute values and display any messages to the users, then you can use the check request check entity check entity method. Okay. Okay, so let's go into check entity method and check what are all the signature parameters we have. Okay, so these are all the implementations we already have. So let me open BP. This one, these are all in active state. Okay, so I'm just opening this BP derivation. Okay, so implementing class. Okay, so for this rule service body, we have the filter values with data model and the entity type. Okay, so you can either uh, do the filter with the data model or the entity type based on your requirement. So I'm going to the check entity method. Okay, so for check entity method, in the signature we have the parameters like this. So we have input parameters for model, so you can get the data model from the change request type, and you have addition, change request number, and entity type, and the input data. Okay, so these all information you will get. And et message is the exporting parameter. So using this et underscore message, you can populate the messages in the change request screen, this screen. So let's say here you are seeing this check. So here you are seeing this error messages and warning messages, right? So all these will come from the check entity method. Okay, so you have to define your messages here, and you have to pass the message to et underscore message. Then it will show the messages there, like based on the type you define here. Okay, so in this you can just go through all this, and here you have the model you will get here, and you can just explore each type here. So if you go here and click on this one, so it is referring to the data model. The IO model is referring to the USMD model extension interface. So here in this interface, you have multiple methods, and you can use whatever the method is relevant to your requirement. Then you can use that and you can get the data. Okay. So we have input conversion, output conversion, and read the data for an entity type. So if you want to read the data from the entity, then you can use the read entity data all. So if you want to read master data, then you can use this char value, and read single character text. So if any specific character value you want to take, then you can use this read single character text. So based on your requirement, you can use any of the method in this interface. Okay, so you get the all information from this. Okay, so next, what is the exporting parameter in this check entity? That is et underscore message is the exporting parameter. Okay, so this is the type USMD underscore T message. So let's just check this type. So in this you have message ID, message type, message number, and the message variables if you have any. So you can pass all this information, and based on this information, system will throw the message in this screen. Okay, in this NWBC screen, the system will throw the message based on the type you define. If the type is error, then it will show like this. If it is information, then it will show the information message here. Okay, so this is for ET message exporting parameter. So like that we have different. So let me just go through these two, C request and entity type. Okay, so this is the change request number we are getting, right? So this is the domain and data element for the change request number. Okay, so next we have USMD underscore entity for entity type. So here if you see, when I go to the USMD underscore entity domain, here in the value range, in this single values you don't have anything, but in the value table you have USMD 0020. Okay, so the entity types will be stored in the USMD 0020. Okay, this table will have the entity type details. So let me go to this table. So this table will have the entity type details based on the model. So you can just go to contents and let me execute it for MM. So these are all the entity types we have for MM data model. So all the information related to the entity types will be stored in the USMD 0020 table. Okay. So these are all the signature we have for check entity method. So let's go to other entity. Sorry, other method. So the next frequently used method is derive entity. Okay. So here you have some code in this derive entity. So the signature parameters we have IO model, the same which we have for the check entity, and edition and entity type you have here. Okay. And ET messages is the exporting parameter, and CT underscore data is the changing parameter. Okay. Okay. So here, this is the logic they have built. So this derive entity we use is for derivation. So we discussed about the derivations, right? So if you want to derive any attribute value based on other attribute value, then you can use the derive entity. So here, just look into any of this. So based on the business, 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So if you want to do any derivations for single entity, then you can write it here in the derive entity. Okay. So and then you can, sorry. So then after derivation logic, you can pass the values which you want to populate. Then you can pass it to CT underscore data. Then it will show the information there in the change request in the NWBC screen. Okay. So next, you can, so for this single entity, you can write the validations and derivations using this USMD underscore rule service body, or else you can use the T code USMD. You can use the T code USMD underscore rule. Okay, using this T code also you can write your derivations and validations for single entity. Okay, give me a minute. Sorry. So you can use the either the USMD underscore rule service body or USMD underscore rule T code for single entity validations and derivations. Okay. So let me go to the USMD underscore rule. Okay. Oh, it's taking time to open. Yeah. So here, this is the uh, transaction, like this is the screen for USMD underscore rule. So you can just open the your data model for whatever the data model you want to do the validations and derivations, or you want to write the business rules. You can just open the data model and click on continue. So here for data model we have opened, right? So here in the trigger function, same what are all the methods we have in that body, you have it here. Okay, so change entity, derivations, change request, addition, all these are same methods which we have here. You can cross verify. Okay, so here we have the same methods. So check entity, hierarchy, change request, derive entity, so all the same methods we have here. Okay, so here you can just right click on any of the method for which you want to do the like trigger functions. You can click on the right, you can just click right click and create the functions. Okay, so here go to create object node, and using this you can write your rules. So if you want to write any rules or rule set or functions, anything, you can just create it and write it. This one I'll explain detail in the next class. So first let's understand what are all we have. Okay, so this is for a single entity. You have two options. You can either use the rule service body or you can use the USMD underscore rule T code. Okay, so next, if you want to do the validations and derivations for cross entity types, then you have to use the USMD underscore rule service cross entity body. Okay, so this body will work if you want to do cross entity validations. Okay, so in this interface, you have only one method, that is derive method. Okay, and next in the filter options, you have only filter with data model. Okay, so here we have one. Let me open this USMD rule service. So in this, go to implementing class. So we have the derive method. Okay, so for this cross entity body, in the signature we have IO model, the same input parameter, and we have other different change data and write data. Okay, So we have these two different input parameters, IO changed data and IO write data. So you can use these two parameters to get the information from your change request. Okay. So here this changed data will read the buffer data, and IO write data will be used to write the data to the buffer. Okay. So let me go to the read buffer. So in this read buffer interface, you have three methods, that is read data, get entity types, get edition. Okay. So if you want to first, if you want to do any derivations and validations based on cross entities, so you have to get this information, right? So let's take an example. I want to derive the purchasing org information based on the basic data material type. Okay. So then I have to know this material type attribute, what value user has entered. So to get this information, this we call as the buffer data. Till before the submission of a change request, all this information will be stored in the buffer. Okay. So this we call as the buffer data. And to do the derivations from cross entity or normal entity, then you need to read the buffer data from the entity type which you want to do the validations. Okay. So then you can use this read data method which we have in the IO change data. Then you can read your buffer data, and you can take the value from this read data. Okay. Let me check if anything is there here. Okay, so there is no logic, but yeah. So you can use this IO changed data, which is a type reference to this interface buffer read. Okay. So you can use the read data in this buffer read interface, and you can read the buffer data related to the entity types. Okay. Next we have IO write data. So you can use this IO write data to write the information. So based on the derivations, you have to write some information into the NWBC screen, right? So that information you can write using the IO write data. So in this buffer write, we have three methods, that is write data, delete data, and create data reference. Okay. First let us check this write data. So you can use this method write data to populate the information in the NWBC screen. Okay. So here let's go to the parameters in the write data method. So you have input parameters, that is entity, key, and attribute, and the data. So you can pass the data to IT data, and then you have to give the entity. So for whatever the entity you want to uh, pass the information, and you have key value and then attribute. So from in that entity, what attribute you want to uh, write the value. So you have to define all these, like just you need to pass the information to all these parameters. Then it will take the values from this parameter, and it will use, like it will populate in the NWBC screen. Okay. So same like write data, you will have the different parameters for different methods. Okay. So like in the next classes, while we do the hands-on, I'll explain with the code also. Okay. So how we can use this IO write data and IO change data, and how we can pass the information using the write data method and everything. Okay. Now this is a standard one. So in this we don't have the much information. Okay, so next is ET message info. So same like rule service body, you have the exporting parameter for messages. So you can use this ET underscore message info. So you have to pass the messages whatever you want to populate in the NWBC screen based on some conditions. Then you can pass it to the ET underscore message info. So here you can see just for the message info, there is some logic here. So they are passing some data model information and change data and write data to the derive method, and then they are getting the messages into lt underscore message. Okay, so and after getting the lt messages, like the messages into this internal table lt message, they are checking if any value is available in the any record is available in this internal table lt message. If any record is available, then they are passing it to the et message info. Okay, so insert lines of lt messages into table et message info they are using. So like this you can pass the messages whatever you want to et message info. Okay, so and uh, in this cross entity body, so if you directly pass your messages to et message info, then like if you are using the message type as error message. Okay, so e message type you are using, then that message type will be turned into warning message. Okay, so here errors are changed to warnings. So using, if you are directly passing to et underscore message info, then the error, if you are passing the error message also, then it will change into the warning message. Okay, so if you want to populate any error message, then you have to use different mechanism here. You can use the raise exception or any other mechanism you can use. Okay, so in this rule service cross entity we have only one method, that is derive method. Okay, so any questions till now? So these are the baddies we have for validations and derivations. Okay, so in mdg, for change request we can do the business rules based on the user requirements, and that we call as the validations and derivations. So to implement those validations and derivations that are business rules, you can use the usmd rule service or usmd rule service cross entity baddies. Okay, so these two are the baddies which trigger in the background throughout the CR process till the submission of the CR process. Okay, so once you submit, then the workflow baddie will trigger. What is the workflow baddie enhancement spot? Anyone? We discussed about the workflow baddies, right? So what is the enhancement spot for the workflow?
I think USMD SSW service.
Yeah. So USMD SSW service processor is the workflow enhancement spot. Okay. So for the validations and derivations, uh, for validations and derivations, the enhancement spot is USMD rule service. And in the rule service enhancement spot, we have two baddies. And in the workflow service processor enhancement spot, we have how many baddies we have
5.
in the service processor?
5.
Oh, 5 baddies.
Yeah. Okay. So in the service processor enhancement spot, you have five baddies, and in the rule service, you have two baddies. Okay. So these baddies will trigger, the rule service will trigger throughout the change request submission process, and after the submission process throughout the workflow, the service processor baddie will trigger. Okay, so any doubts still here?
No, Sadhna.
Okay, yeah, okay, so now I'll just share the user details, like user IDs and the passwords to everyone. Okay, so okay,